Hey guys, it's PSL here, and I'm here for the 6th part in the What Matters Most series, in which we're finding out which component of a car matters most to its overall speed by fitting them individually to a Honda NSX on Gran Turismo 4, and then taking them out for a 1-lap dash around Laguna Seca. So in this episode we're looking at the entire drivetrain of the car, not just the transmission and the gearing like I said last episode, but the entire drivetrain, so the clutch, flywheel, etc. But obviously we will still be doing the transmission, so firstly let's have a look at that. So buying a custom transmission allows you to customise your gear ratios, so that means we can set them perfectly suited for the car and the track. So in short, we will set the gear ratios so that the car is just about to max out in top speed at the end of the longest straight, and that means we gain acceleration without losing any noticeable top speed loss, as obviously we're not going to exceed that speed around Laguna Seca anyway, hence why you set the top speed to that speed anyway. But aside from the transmission and the gearing, like I mentioned, we have got some other smaller parts which could add the odd tenth, and are still a part of the drivetrain, so hence why I've got to include them. So the first extra part is the clutch. Now you can have the large single clutch, the double plate clutch, or the triple plate clutch. Now the game claims that by fitting a triple plate clutch, in combination with a light flywheel, then acceleration of the car can be improved. So that's exactly what we'll be doing by buying the lightest flywheel, which is the racing flywheel, and putting it in combination with the triple plate clutch. And also the flywheel claims to improve engine response and acceleration, and interestingly it also claims to benefit deceleration as well, but however both the clutch and the flywheel both warn that they are only beneficial if the car is highly modified or has a lot of torque, which we will have to be wary of when we're fitting these parts to our car. And we're not going to be adding any more torque to the car because we can't add any more modifications to the car yet, because well, obviously that defeats the point of the series. But one last thing we will add to the drivetrain of the car is a limited slip differential, or LSD. Now the limited slip diff can adjust the initial torque going through the engine, and now both the clutch and flywheel claim that they only work when the engine has a lot of torque running through it. So once we've bought the limited slip diff and fitted it to our car, we then have the option of tuning it. And to tune it, so we put the initial torque setting up to 40 out of 60. This is because too much initial torque and the car can be harder to turn, and so will result in more understeer. And so 40 felt like a good number to settle on after me quickly testing the LSD out. And our limited slip diff has a setting for acceleration and deceleration as well, but I left these on the standard settings of 40 for acceleration and 20 for deceleration, as they seem to work fine anyway, because they gave the engine plenty of torque but not too much understeer. Now deceleration setting is lower than the others, because the deceleration setting, if set too high, can directly impact a more understeer. That is the direct cause of raising it, seemingly. And so I did want it on a fairly low setting of 20, because understeer is kind of the worst thing you could do to this NSX, hence why it's on 20. And I know these settings for the limited slip diff may not be the optimum settings, but these are the best that I found, and if there are better ones then be sure to let me know in the comments below. But anyway, back to the newly acquired transmission and the customisable gear ratios and how we're going to set these out. Now the best setting I found to set it on for this car around this track, so that the car just doesn't reach its top speed in its top gear, which is 6th gear. Yeah, I found the best setting for that was on 2, which is extremely low because it goes on a scale between 1 and 25, with 1 giving you the most acceleration and 25 giving you the highest top speed. And this may seem like I'm massively short gearing the car here, but when testing it out, even on the extremely low setting of 2, it was just reaching top speed, which is now significantly reduced to be only 125 miles an hour or thereabouts, just before the end of the start-finish straight. So this was indeed the optimum setting for the transmission on this car around this track, as low as it may seem, and it does seem crazily low. So that's the drivetrain part set up, and we've already discussed the benefits they can add. With better acceleration, better engine response and better deceleration, it should improve the NSX's lap time. But now again, let's remind ourselves of the standard time for this series once again, which was set way back in the first episode with a time of 1:39.7, which is set in a standard Honda NSX before all of these drivetrain parts were fitted. Now with the new drivetrain parts fitted, there was an improvement in car performance, but surprisingly, there wasn't that much of an improvement in straight line speed, which I will get into in a bit more depth later. However, through the settings on the limited slip diff, there was an improvement in cornering capability, and there was something you could just sort of feel. There was more controllable grip, there was more range towards the grip. It was one of those things which gave you driver confidence more than car ability, but the car ability definitely was improved, as well as my confidence with the NSX and its wider range of cornering grip. But because of the limited slip diff settings and the benefits it provided, the newly tuned NSX was able to set a lap time of 1:38.6. Now that's 1.1 seconds faster than the standard car without this limited slip diff. And obviously all the other drivetrain parts of the clutch and the flywheel fitted, which also helped to provide that 1.1 second benefit and set a lap time of 1:38.6. So while the limited slip diff, clutch and racing flywheel were beneficial to the NSX, I did say how the customizable transmission wasn't that beneficial to the NSX in its straight line speed. Now I find the easiest way to show this is for a 400 metre dash across a strip in Las Vegas. Now the strip is only 400 metres long, so acceleration and slick gear changes are key. And so as you can see, the standard NSX without the customisable transmission set a time of 13.813 seconds and reach 103 miles an hour at the end of the straight, which isn't bad for a standard NSX, but surely we should see an improvement with these new and supposedly better drivetrain parts, right? Especially as the transmission is designed specifically to aim acceleration. But despite all of this, the customised transmission set a time of 13.838 seconds, which is 25 thousandths of a second slower than the standard car. Although one thing it did have going for it was that the NSX was reaching a higher top speed at the end of the straight of 107 miles an hour compared to 103 miles an hour in the standard car. So where was the time lost? Well, clearly, if the strip was a bit longer, then the tuned NSX would have been quicker, as obviously it did have a higher top speed upon crossing the line. However, if we were measuring top speed, then the standard car would have been quicker anyway, due to its longer and untuned gear ratios. But my theory for the tuned NSX being slower in a straight line is because the tuned NSX crossed the line in 6th gear, and the standard one only crossed the line in 4th gear, which means that the tuned car lost time from the extra shifting it had to do, and so lost the drag race by a fraction of a second, because obviously when you're gearing you can't put power through the engine, so because it reached a higher gear it had to do more shifts where power wasn't going through the engine than the standard car, and hence why it lost the drag race even by such a small margin. But even despite that result, it is difficult to say whether customised gear ratios are really worth it, as they seem to help out on the track a tiny bit. But to be honest, it is really difficult to judge, so who knows how useful these customised gear ratios are. But be sure to leave your theories and opinions on the matter in the comments below, and maybe I'll go over this sometime to find out how useful customisable gear ratios really are, because this was baffling to be honest, how a part that's designed to improve acceleration seemingly didn't improve acceleration, although that may have been how I tuned the gear ratios and how many gears I set it to. It could all be down to that, but as I say, leave your theories and opinions on this in the comments below. Anyway guys, that is the end of the 6th part of the What Matters Most series, and I hope you enjoyed it. Despite how confusing and slightly weird it was, I hope it was still maybe useful or at least interesting for you guys to watch. But now next time we'll be seeing how much of an impact the NSX's has on the car's performance. So be sure to see a super speed and super modded NSX in the next part, while following the advice of a Mr. Jeremy Clarkson. So I'll see you guys then.